According to my source, don't go to the light. Instead, go through the grid. Once you're discarnate and have left the Earth plane, you would see the grid that surrounds the planet in the astral. It's like a fuzzy band around the planet, now looking like Swiss cheese with lots of holes in it. Escape through it without letting yourself get bothered by any being who might want to distract you. You don't even need to pay attention to them. Most of them want you to go into the tunnel anyway, and some are your spirit guides. Once you're outside the grid, you will see the universe differently. It apparently looks nothing like you've been taught. When you're outside the grid, you're no longer within Earth's frequency band and can see things the way they are. You will see an incredible number of stars, and possibly, you will experience a lot of spectral dimensions at once and at will. It may be overpowering at first, in a good way, but you will soon get used to it. Here is another thing I heard the other day on a recent Pleiadian CD, from the beginning of 2013. They said that part of our solar system is also under quarantine, a frequency fence, which stretches all the way past Jupiter. They are of course not the only ones who talk about a quarantine. I brought it up in my Wes Penre papers quite a few times as well, showing evidence that this is the case. Some say the quarantine was lifted in January of 2013, but I don't believe that this is true. I found it interesting, however, that they mention Jupiter as the outer boundary for the quarantine, because the next planet away from Earth, Saturn, is where the Council of Zender sits and decides who can enter the solar system and who may leave. Anyway, this may be another barrier we need to pass before we can actually leave our own solar system. We need the permission from the Zender Council. As strange as it sounds, this should not be a problem, although, as I suggested in the Wes Penre papers, the Council is alien invader force in nature. All you need to do is to hold your ground and say that you are done with your experiences in this solar system, and you will now move on as a sovereign being of fire to experience other realms of existence. They will let you through because they don't want you inside the quarantine anyway, because slaves who know they are slaves and no longer can be controlled is nothing that the invader force wants to deal with. They are busy enough keeping the rest of the masses under control. This may sound like a handful, and it may even sound scary, which is understandable. However, no one will actually stop you, as long as you're determined and tell any being you meet that you're not interested in staying in the solar system. If they believe they can't manipulate you, they won't stop you because if they do, they commit a crime that can be devastating for them, and they don't want to risk it. They have to be very careful so they won't break the laws. If they do, they can literally be invaded in turn by those who have a stronger military force than they do. Once you're past Saturn, you are free to go anywhere. You can either explore the universe on your own to see if you find a world where you want to live. Always ask for permission to enter a world first, so you don't interfere with the evolution on the planet. If the beings are highly evolved, you'll be able to talk to them telepathically, and if they notice you are telling them the truth, they may accept you. Another option is to wish yourself to Orion or to the Ka, where pure spirit dwells. You will definitely be accepted into both as an evolved human soul. The Orion Empire is allegedly a safe place to live in, and probably a better choice than to try to merge with a soul group on a planet outside the Empire. Most of the Empire has access to the Ka anyway. Normally, just before you pass over, relatives, friends, and others who are and have been dear to you will visit you in the dream state. This is why when you die you would meet all these people on the other side, even though some of these people could still be alive. The dream state has different rules than the waking state, and time does not go by at the same rate. The person who is asleep may have slept for 8 hours, but in dream state, perhaps, a month has gone by. The opposite can be true as well. Only a few minutes went by in the dream state, while 8 hours passed in the physical reality. We visit the astral planes all the time while we're dreaming and talk to relatives that have passed over or do other things in the astral. If you think you're just having a boring time during the day at work or in general, that certainly does not apply to the dream state. More or less, every night you are out on adventures that your conscious mind would not think is possible. Even if you say you remember some of your dreams, it's only the top layers you recall, and always the ones that occur just before you awaken. The real astral travel happens when you're in your deepest REM sleep. Rapid eye movement, REM. When you're in deep sleep, your eyes move very rapidly from left to right and right to left. During REM sleep is when you have your most vivid dreams. That's when you leave your body and go into the astral with your light body and visit other dimensions, where things are very different than they are here. There, time is not linear, and you can find yourself involved in more than one event at the same time, and seem to manage them all, i.e. you split yourself up in smaller factions and experience different adventures simultaneously, and these experiences are rarely in a linear fashion. If you don't have an alarm clock set, your physical body tells you when it's rested or needs to get up to use the restroom, and your light body is then wrapping things up quickly and it returns to the body. There is no chance, unless you are terminally ill, that the soul and light body will leave and not come back, because you are connected through the stomach area with a silver cord, which can stretch as much as necessary for the light body to have its experiences. When consciousness leaves the body during REM sleep, it also leaves the awakened world behind, and is therefore quite unconcerned with what is happening here in the physical realm while it is away. There is very little it is not willing to explore, since it's also curious by nature. This is why you sometimes have nightmares. Consciousness is having an experience in the dark realms of multidimensional reality. With all this in mind, and when you are uncertain what to do when you die and where to go, a good thing would be to make a commitment before you fall asleep. Think, for example, tonight, in dream state, I am going to visit with beings who have my best interests in mind, and they will show me what I need to do after body death if I want to leave the grid and the quarantine behind and go to a place that is the absolute best for me to grow in as spirit and mind. There is nothing particularly different when dying than when falling asleep. In both instances, you leave your body and go into the astral, and it's not a big deal. You die every night, and you even go into the tunnel and the light to meet with dead relatives and friends. Even alive friends and relatives may be there, as we just discussed. If someone you hold dear has just passed over, you can rest assured that in dreamscape you will visit with him or her and greet each other on the other side, to make him or her feel welcome and safe, wherever he or she chooses to go. You may even stay together for a month or so in the astral before you return to your physical body. In the earth plane, only 8 hours went by. The only difference between dying and dreaming is that when you die, the silver cord is cut and you cannot re-enter your physical body again. You are considered dead. Just because you are in the astral every night when you dream, the soul sometimes doesn't understand that it's dead when death is happening for real because it doesn't feel any different. Normally, that will be resolved when the spirit guide, or guides, comes and gets the person and helps him or her go toward the light, explaining he or she is dead. The confusion is sometimes an issue when death came suddenly and unexpectedly, and seldom after a long period of illness, where the soul has been prepared. Now, the reader may be able to see where I'm going with this. If you prepare your own passing by visiting with certain beings who will become your friends in dreamland and do so several nights in a row, and every now and then after that, and ask them to help, you will learn how to escape through the grid and the quarantine. It's going to be relatively easier on the day when you actually die, if that's the route you consciously have decided to take while in a waking state. You have practiced it as many times as you need already in your dreams, and although it may still feel unreal to you when you read this, just remember that when you're in the dream state, same as the death state, you are in a familiar realm that may not be familiar to you now, because there is no connection between dream state, the subconscious mind, and the waking state, the conscious mind. After you've died and left your body, you're in as much a familiar state as you are when you're awake. You may say, "Aha, I'm dead. I'm going to hover around here for a bit to make sure everybody here is okay that I'm leaving, and then I'm going to move on." Therefore, when you've done what you think that you need to do for those who stay behind, you do what you've been drilled to do several times before, and you leave the grid and the quarantine behind. To speak in terms that are more general about death and how people experience it, let's examine a few common belief systems. Normally, you simply go to a place that corresponds to your belief system. If you're a very devoted Christian, for example, and expect to see Jesus at the end of the tunnel, one of your spirit guides will take on the form of Jesus, exactly the way the deceased person saw him in life. Jesus, the spirit guide, will then perhaps take the hand of the deceased and lead him or her into heaven. There will be a beautiful heaven, exactly the way the deceased imagined it, and he or she will be very blissed and happy. Another deceased is absolutely certain he or she will go to hell because of what was done while alive, and nothing can make him or her think differently. Therefore, the spirit guides will have to take the forms of the devil, with pitchfork and all, demons, and whatever the deceased envisions. If the thoughts are of burning in the eternal fire, that's what will happen, but only for a while. I will explain in a moment. A third person may be someone who believes in the need to cross the river Styx to get to the other side, so the spirit guides need to take on the form of those included in such an event and lead the person through Zabalba, the underworld. The river will appear as real as any river, and one of the guides will help with crossing it. If a person is an atheist, it may be hard for a spirit guide to assure the deceased that he or she is dead and still conscious. Such a person doesn't understand how powerful thoughts and emotions are, so a feeling of being tossed around from one reality to another at an incredible speed with no rhyme or reason could be experienced. The deceased doesn't realize that thoughts are responsible for the movement to different places in no time. Here, the spirit guide needs to make the deceased focus, but nothing will help until trust is established between the guide and the deceased. It doesn't matter what your belief system is, you go where you believe you're going. There is no real heaven or hell, but you get what you need to feel settled down on the other side, and once you've established yourself, the spirit guide or guides will have a talk with you and explain that this reality you are now experiencing, whether it's heaven, hell, or something else, is not real, and it will vanish before your spirit eyes. You will now meet with friends and relatives and start creating your own reality up there instead, learning that you are the one who is creating your own reality with thoughts, emotions, and intentions. Then you go through the whole procedure of examining your previous life and other lifetimes related to that one you, then meet with the council, decide a new goal, and eventually get back to Earth. There are also learning centers in the afterlife, where the student is often reading the Book of Me. It's not called that, of course, but this book is about the deceased person, who studies this material to get more insights about himself or herself, apparently. This is from Dr. Newton's case studies, quite a few other regression therapists, channeled entities, as well as Jane Robert Seth. Therefore, there is enough evidence from unrelated sources to take this seriously. The deceased is not only studying personal material, but also material on other subjects. The question is, on what subjects? This has not been answered. In the light of the afterlife seeming to be one big mass hallucination, built on a hallucinated belief system, one would suspect that the learning centers don't particularly tell the truth about things either. Similar to the schools on Earth, they are most probably preparing us for the next incarnation.